So you can't really compare what
housing crash, war,
what we as millennials have gone through versus what you went through, and then versus what your our grandparents were through. It would be completely different, right? Mm-hmm. Our grandparents were dealing with just surviving by the skin of their color, the color of their skin, first of all. And then our parents got an opportunity, and they're like, okay, we just got an opportunity. We ain't gonna stick here. We ain't gonna say nothing because we just making our way through. And then now we're a bit more comfortable to be like, no, just that's not enough. Like, we need to do more. We need to receive more.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the More Than a Side Hustle podcast, where we help 9-to-5ers create more impact, income, and influence outside their jobs. And hopefully today is no different. My name is Anthony.
And I am Janilka. Thank you for coming back on another Tuesday to hear us speak about all of the good things. I haven't been able to read a review in a bit because you guys aren't leaving them. All shade, but I'm gonna read one that came up by,
and we're over 155 reviews too.
Q09875727. Love to hear about the cleaning business and the things y'all are doing to create generational wealth. Great podcast. So thank you, Q, multiple numbers, for leaving that review for us. If you didn't know, you can actually write us a review and share with the world and everyone why you like listening to us week after week. Be sure that you are subscribing as well on our YouTube if you're watching us every week. So, yeah. Thank you.
And if you are brand new here, you may not even know who the hell we are and what we do. So,
yeah,
one of the things we actually do is we own a 7-figure cleaning business. We're actually about to pass the $2 million mark in that cleaning business. We've been doing that for about 6 years. Mm-hmm. And we own a digital education business as well. We teach people, that's a multiple 7-figure business as well. We teach people how to start and scale their own remote cleaning businesses. And the thing about it is that we don't have to clean houses. So a lot of people listen to us in regards to that, but we've been entrepreneurs since 2017. We are married, we're a couple, and we like just sharing information, but then also helping you get the information and create that impact, income, and influence outside your 9-to-5. I am a former 9-to-5er.
And I'm still working my 9-to-5.
So
and we have a beautiful little girl.
Yeah, we give you different perspectives on life, business, relationship.
Gliding over Alani.
Yeah, and Alani. So, actually, speaking of the cleaning business, we are actually realizing when this episode releases around the same time, we started our cleaning business about 6 years ago, this time in 2017.
Yes, and we usually kind of go live and talk more detail about it, why we started it, how it's been going, all the things that you guys have questions on, which we do have multiple episodes on as well. But we always get new people following us, so maybe they don't know where to find the information. And we share more on that.
Yeah. So if you guys do you want to dive into that today?
Not really.
Okay.
I don't want to focus just on the cleaning business. Our last 2 to 3 episodes was about the cleaning business. So if you want more about that, go back and listen to that. Plus our multiple old ones that we have.
That's true.
Plus our live ones that we have for testimonials. So not today. When I wanted to talk about it, we'll talk about it.
But we got them on YouTube as well. And that's the thing about it. You guys show us what you want to listen to and hear. So anytime we talk about the cleaning business, the downloads go up, the ratings go up, the reviews go up. So we know what the people want. We just got to want to give it to you. So what are we talking about today?
What has been on yours, because I don't know if we said this on the podcast before, but probably. A lot of Anthony's conversations start with, I was listening to this podcast, and a lot of them start with that. So what has been a conversation that you brought to me lately that we've been discussing, or something that you sent to me? I send TikToks. He starts his conversation with, I was listening to this podcast.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
No, I'm just asking. I'm literally asking, what's a conversation you brought to me recently? I'm not. I'm not saying it's a secret.
Oh, so she wants me to drive the conversation. I was like, what the hell are you talking about here? So I bring you a ton of conversations. You kind of
pick one. What the hell?
You kind of put me on the spot here. Number one.
Well, before we started recording, he said, I got it.
I was gonna dive right into what we've been talking about. What we was gonna talk about today.
Oh, okay. Let's do it then.
Yeah, you put me on the spot. I was kind of confused there. Mm-hmm. So this is one of the topics that I actually had no idea was currently in rotation. But it's one of those conversations that we hear all the time where everyone says, do the hard work, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, and you'll make it happen. And we'll go ahead and I'll let Janelle kind of take it off from there.
So this was a Twitter topic. If you're not on there, you probably didn't hear about it. But a quick Twitter topic from The View, where Whoopi Goldberg... The View is a morning talk show that's been around for, I don't know, 20 years. Couldn't tell you. Probably more than that. That Whoopi Goldberg and 4 other women sit and discuss different things. The topic came up about millennials having kids and different things like that. And I just want to share her part of it, not the continued conversation, but how she started the conversation.
Millennials are lazy.
Whoa.
That's actually the topic.
The economic climate.
Dream, then past generations.
Hold on, let's start it.
Apparently, millennials and Gen Z have a much different view of the American dream than past generations. Data shows that soaring inflation, student debt, and limited room for advancement in the workplace has made them feel that milestones like affording a home, starting a family, excelling within the corporate structure are out of reach. Does every generation feel this way at some point? I say yes. What do you think?
Well, since we're
Okay. So you couldn't see her facial expressions, but she basically was calling it BS, if you will. So are millennials lazy? First of all, one thing to note is maybe we should Google what is the age range, but millennials range from like, I don't know, straight to 40. So that's first things first. I think people are getting it confused with, I don't even know what the other ones are called at this point. Gen Z, X, boom, I don't know what they're called. But they're getting confused with that. So we're actually 40 years old. She went on to say, well, most of us are, she went on to say a smart remark of, yeah, of course you can't make it if you're just working 4 hours a week or if you just want to work 4 hours a week. When you look at, because most of us are millennials, listening to this conversation, watching this conversation, how many people in your life are actually working 4 hours a week? None. Mm-hmm. No one in my life is working that amount of time. So I feel like that was a slap in the face type of comment. I think she was trying to be sarcastic, saying essentially that we don't want to work. So it brought up just the whole conversation of millennials not buying homes, either not having kids or pushing it back way later. One of them also had a statistic that millennials will be the first generation that they are expecting will do worse than their parents did, which, you know, most people want to do better than their parents. So those are all of the conversations that came up that we want to kind of touch on and dive in and give our opinion on.
Yeah, so millennials are from 1981 to 1996.
That's a big gap. How old are they right now? A range.
Yeah, so if you go to 1980, they're nearing, well, they're close, they're upwards of 40
plus, yeah.
And Gen Z is a generation after, so that's 1997 to 2012. So that's
graduated college.
So that's a huge distinction between two different groups that I think people kind of
lump together.
And I can see why you kind of lump it together because you think millennials are younger, but you have a range of millennials as well. So I would say with our generation, so being born in the mid to late 80s, mm-hmm. Then you have the early 80s, and then you have the 90s. Early 90s. 3 different generations, three different ranges of ages.
But they're still in the millennial.
They're still a millennial. So you got the low, mid, and high. Mm-hmm. And I would say the low and the mid are closer on certain things. So like the low 80s to mid 80s, we were all born around that same, especially in New York and up in the East Coast, you're born around that crack era. You got that type of stuff. So you got the crack babies. And then you got the late, what happened?
No, go ahead. I don't know.
Because that's where the commonalities kind of lie.
Okay.
We have that commonality where we're older, we got it out the mud, we hustled. That's the 80s. That was the generation of the 80s. And then the late 80s.
Which is me.
No. We're talking about mid to late 80s.
How am I not late 80s?
What's 8? I'm 86.
Yeah, once you hit 85 and above, just like anything in life, you are.
So yeah, 80s. So you got the early 80s and you got the early. Let me repeat this again because you're messing me up now.
You said late 80s.
You cutting me off. So the 80s as a whole is a generation, and then you got the late 80s to like the 90s, which actually no, let's just do 90s.
Okay, because how much later can you get than 88, 89? And that's
all right, so let's just do 80s and 90s. Actually, yes. 80s and 90s. You got the 80s and the 90s. I'm sorry, guys. Let me break this down again. The 80s and the 90s. And I say that because the 80s got the whole crack baby thing. In the 90s, we actually got more of that. We didn't have technology. So we were early enough or late enough where we didn't have technology. We had to kind of grind and go outside and stuff.
And then we experienced.
And then we got technology. Mm-hmm. The 90s were essentially born with technology. So that's why I'm saying it's like a huge gap. There's a huge gap, but we're all lumped together as millennials, which kind of makes it hard.
But I understand that, but that doesn't mean that. So she's seeing it as that it just necessarily makes us lazy because we don't want to work. And I think there's a different mindset. Let's talk about the work component of it. There's a different mindset from our parents to us. Absolutely. Our parents decide, I'm going to get a job. I stay at this job, not until I die, but until I retire, and that's it. Mm-hmm. There's nothing else. There's no job hopping to see a pay raise. We are at a generation that we are job hopping to see a pay raise. People under us now may be at a generation that they ain't even going to a traditional job. But there's nothing wrong with that. I think that was the issue, is the way that she's speaking about it, one. But then to also say millennials are only wanting to work 4 hours, you're probably talking about the other generation. You're not necessarily talking about the older millennials. And I think that also causes an issue. Yeah. So maybe the ones that they would consider millennials that were born in, I think you said it ended 1990, maybe, but those that are born in 1981, 85, 88, you're working 40 hours plus. And,
you're good.
The other part of it is the work side of it, but then the other part of it is the money part of it, right? So what they were able to survive with back in the day, we can no longer. Even if you compare, back in the day, our 100,000 equals their 50,000. But then they probably was making 47,000, right? Nowadays, people aren't touching the way inflation is going, and that's part of the argument as well. Like, you can't just say, yeah, this is what we wanted, and this is what we worked for it, and we're working for it as well.
So are we on this?
Out of reach.
Are we here trying to defend the millennials?
Well, that's the year I'm in. I need to defend it. Like, why wouldn't I defend it?
Some of the characteristics that a millennial possesses, and I'm just looking this up based on what they said. So entrepreneurial, that was something that our generation before us didn't have. Learning new things.
Okay.
Like we have a crave to learn new things.
Because we have access to new things.
Because we have access. Engage in social activism, so we stand up for our rights a lot more, and better educated and more familiar than previous generations. And I think that goes back to us. I think the millennials is probably one of the best generations because we didn't have technology, but then we had to learn it when it did come out.
Yeah.
So like Generation Z,
they got it all.
Generation Z is the Zoomers, quote unquote, right? And it derived from millennials, but the problem is that they get lumped up in this conversation as well. But those are the ones that are money-driven and ambitious. They're more politically and socially aware. They're racially and ethnically diverse. They're engaged mostly in social activism, and they digital natives. They don't want to show up to an office. They don't want to be near people. They want to be able to travel and live their lives.
That all goes with the times, right? That all goes with us being exposed to different things. We talk about that before, social media, the good and bad of that. And most of the things that they're mentioning has to do with the fact that they have access to more. The net, the www, Google, all those things that previous generations did not have access to. But the other part, there was something else that I wanted to say. When we speak about homes, right? So I know that, and I've had this conversation with my dad before, years ago.
What did your dad say?
Well, years ago.
Get out of New York.
No, not even that. Years ago when I was still living at home with my mother, so maybe I was, let's say, 24, 23, he's like, you got to get your own place. And I'm like, living in New York City, me getting my own place would mean a roommate, probably. There's no way I can afford my own place. Before, you were making enough money that you could, as a generation, you could afford your own place. You could afford to live by yourself.
Yeah.
Now, almost more than half of my friends do still live at home because they cannot afford it. In New York, yes, but in general, our parents used to be able to afford it in New York, so what would be the difference now? Going back to that inflation and us not making the same amount that people once did, or enough money that to go with the inflation be able to afford basic things, such as buying a house or even renting an apartment.
So why can't we just make more money then? That's kind of what Whoopi Goldberg was saying. She's like,
she worked hard.
She's like, we worked hard. We could go out and make more money if we need it.
because our parents are still in the jobs, not allowing us to move up in our companies because they decided to stay there and stick there for life.
So think about
so we can't move up until
think about that. I was at the district court and I was there for 3 years, and you got people who are clerks and justice departments and this, that, and the third. They work into their 60, 70, 80 because that's all they know. And they're like, hey, I'm not leaving this job. I got a cushy job. Why would I leave? And I can't fault you for not wanting to leave a job that you've been in, and you've been doing it for decades longer than I've been alive. So I kind of saw no room for growth there immediately. And that kind of goes back to the millennial. That kind of goes back to the millennial way, I would say, is that when we see no room for growth, there is no reason to stick around. We're not going to be the type to kind of jump ship if we're not going to be the type to stay there just because
we should.
And that kind of goes back to the whole silent quitting thing. There's like, no, we're loud quitting. We're leaving this job, and we're gonna do our own thing. But you can also say that if you stayed at a job, waited your turn, and the clerk died,
not the clerk died,
and then you end up getting that role. Okay, you may be able to take that and ride that off to the sunset. But most of the time, it's like, I don't need to wait because there's so many opportunities. And that's another thing, too, is that we got a lot more opportunities at our disposal than our parents had.
Right, but it shouldn't be seen in a negative light, too.
Absolutely not.
So I don't think it should be seen, and multiple things have to play a part into it.
But the challenge is when you have an employee that's looking at your resume and they say every 2 years you jump ship, that's going to bring on a red flag for me. It's like, I understand that I'm a younger person in some aspects of it. I've interviewed people who were 10 years younger than me. I've interviewed people who were 10 years older than me. But I see that as a traditionalist because it was a red flag. I want somebody who I know or at least shows me signs that they will stick around.
Is 2 years not enough?
I wouldn't say. So, good question. 2 years
I think that's a long time.
Is, if I see on your resume that every 2 years you had a new job, I'm not saying I'm not going to hire you for that role, but I'm going to say that it forces me to think about, are there other candidates who may be in this for a longer haul? Are there candidates who, quote unquote, may be more seasoned in their career, where I'd say I would rather bring them in, even if they have less experience, I may be able to bring them in and help us roll, help us grow, help us evolve, help us change. And they may be a older demographic. It's kind of like basketball, I would say also. It's like, do you want to win a championship now, or are you looking to build a team that's going to be here for the long haul?
But then I always say that as well, right? I say that with people getting hired. I'm like, some people are just there to do the job. Not everybody's here for the long haul. Not everybody's here to grow with you. And even when you're hiring, I think that shouldn't be... Not that it shouldn't be the expectation, because I understand as a business you want to grow, but every person is not going to be that person that you hire for your business.
What would you rather want from an employer? Someone that's going to be here for the long haul? Or you looking for someone that's here for a good time or a long time?
It depends on what I need in the business at the time.
Are you hiring? Go ahead.
No, I just said it depends on what I need in the business at the time. We may be in a season that I just need us to get this together and then we could take off. It don't matter who's on my team, right? Or we may be in a season that things are slow. We need to get things back in order, SOPs, whatever. So I think it depends on it. But I don't know that I just check you off because you haven't stayed here for a long time. Haven't been at a company for 2 years. When I think about 2 years, the amount that has changed in our lives or people's lives in 2 years, that's a lot of time. If you think about it in business, some could say it's short. I don't think it's that short, really. Day in and day out. I mean, I hear it depends on the field as well, because you hear some companies, some people are like, I've been there for 6 months to a year and I didn't get a bonus, I didn't get a raise. I'm like, child, come to my company, because that ain't happening at all. But it just depends on the field that you're in also. But I don't think 2 years is a short amount of time. I think it's a good amount of time.
So what do you think is too short to be at a job? Because this is where you see people like on that View conversation, because they're kind of generalizing millennials as the whole based on a few stereotypes they've heard. If one of the stereotypes is that millennials job hop, what do you feel like what is too short of a time to be at a job where you kind of say, all right, this is a red flag for me? Because you hire people as well.
6 months to a year probably.
Okay.
A year probably is a short amount of time. But I think on the other side of it, as somebody that works in 9 to 5, you can see how you feel about a job within a year. Probably can see in 3 to 6 months, to be honest. But you can see how you feel about a job and if you feel it's a place that you should be staying at to grow. So it's kind of give or take and figuring that out. But in regards to the conversation, Whoopi wasn't the only one that spoke. There was other people that spoke about just the whole millennial thing. They spoke about the housing, and one of the ladies, she's a millennial, she spoke about what you have said, that back in when you graduated was what was it called? The crash?
Mm-hmm.
That
housing crash.
Housing crash. She was like, most of my adult life, there's been things, right? There was a housing crash. Then we had 9/11. Then we have COVID. Then she's like, most of my adult life, we've been in war. So you can't really compare
housing crash, war, yeah.
What we as millennials have gone through versus what you went through, and then versus what your our grandparents were through. It would be completely different, right? Mm-hmm. Our grandparents were dealing with just surviving by the skin of the color of their skin, first of all. And then our parents got an opportunity, and they're like, okay, we just got an opportunity. We just gonna stick here. We ain't gonna say nothing because we were just making our way through. And then now we're a bit more comfortable to be like, no, just that's not enough. Like, we need to do more. We need to receive more. And I think that was the conversation. But one lady was saying, like, she commends millennials in that they're not just following the traditional route, the traditional norm of I get married, I get a house, I have kids. She was like, I'm happy that they're like making a decision on actually, no, I can't afford a kid because I can't afford myself. So I'm not going to go ahead and bring a kid into this equation. I'm not going to go ahead and bring multiple into this equation. She was like, I didn't have that opportunity. Like, even if you did as a parent, not to say you were forced, but that wasn't the norm. That wasn't the American dream. And I think somebody stated it well. There's like the American dream has changed. And I don't know what it is because I know it's different for every culture, but it has changed from what most people will see as the marriage house kids.
I would say for me, the American dream hasn't changed for my perspective. You get married, you get a house, you have a kid. I feel like I've
how quickly it happens and what you put first, and people putting careers first before they're doing certain things. That's part of a change.
Yeah, that is part of the change. But I would say this. I think for our generation that we're seeing right now on quote unquote social media, you see all the conversations around the gender wars, like men versus women, and even it kind of I'm kind of spitting my age here, but it even goes back to I was talking to somebody about the music choices that we have, and it's like, all right, we had the Foxy Browns and the Little Kims. But those were Foxy Brown, Little Kim was the outliers.
Yeah, there's just them.
They were the outliers that we accepted. And even Foxy Brown was like, I'm going to bring this back to rap. Little Kim, she was like, it's going to be me. This is my lane. There might be some others that I'm missing. But they were the anomalies. They were the outliers. They were the people who were accepted based on their lyrics and their rap. Now I'm thinking about Alani, and we're talking about the generations that are changing behind us. Now, that is the norm for all women rappers. If you're not rapping about that, you ain't making it.
Who is it? We have Cardi B, Sexy Red.
You are not making it.
And Meg Thee Stallion.
Every single one. After Nicki Minaj, that was it. It was over. And
Nicki Minaj, yeah.
And it's like, if you're not taking off your clothes, if you're not sexualizing music, if you're not demonizing everything that you do as a woman, it's kind of like that's what our generation has to deal with. That's what they have to see. And it's hard it's kind of, I don't know if I'm still on topic here, but when you talk about older generations, talking about the younger generations, this is stuff they're seeing. So the Whoopi Goldberg and the whole conversation is based on what they're seeing and what they're hearing today. And now you may say, well, somebody younger than me say, there's plenty of women out there. I don't see them. I don't know them. This is what I see. So if this is all I see and this is all I know, does that make it right? Absolutely not. But that means we have to do a better job at showcasing the other highlights so I can change my statement.
No, I mean, that's true. I mean, the gender wars and everything does kind of, not wars, but the gender topics does play into some of this, not necessarily all of it, but some of it. I think it's a conversation to have. I think the problem lies when you make this general statement that millennials are lazy And it's like, we are working our butt off here, but we're getting nowhere because of the economy. Not that it has nothing to do with us, but it has nothing to do with us in that we are not the ones making the choices of that, it's cost this much money to do this. It costs this much money to do that. Like what it used to cost to raise a child, what was required, all these other things is not the same. It's not, you can't look at it the same way, which I think she was doing or generalizing it. And it's just not fair to do. Mm-hmm. Like I said, the millennial on there, she was like, it is a statistic that this will be the first generation that does worse than their parents. And Whoopi was like, we've heard it all before. I've heard that in my generation too, that we were going to do worse than our parents, and we decided not to. And it's like, I think we spoke about this today. It's so easy to say that I decided not to when you're in a different financial place, right? And it's for most people, I would say that if I was in your financial place as well, knowing I don't know all her numbers, but it seems harder to receive the message as well when it's coming from someone that is in a way different tax bracket, I should say.
Yeah.
Way different tax bracket. Not that she can't talk, because she can have opinion, absolutely. But I think you need to be mindful of how you generalize generations.
I mean, imagine when she came into acting. And the people before her could say they had it a lot harder than her.
Right.
I mean, we all gonna say that. We all gonna say pick yourself up by the shoestrings or your boot laces and get it out the mud. Somebody else is gonna have it harder than you at the end of the day. You just gotta choose your heart.
That is true.
You gotta choose your heart. Somebody got it harder. We're gonna have it harder than Alani. She's gonna have it harder than somebody else. At the end of the day, it's really based on your perspective and what do you choose to make of it. You could sit here and say, well, my parents had it easy. I'm not going to do nothing. And by all means, you probably ain't going to do nothing. But that's going to be a decision that you got to make.
And then also just being mindful because there's such a range when it comes to these generations, we got to be mindful of it. Of saying, oh, this is what they do, or they don't want to work, or they don't want to do that. Because everybody that I know, friends and family, work their butt off. I don't know anybody working 4 hours or wants to work 4 hours a week. I don't know anybody doing that.
I want to work. Well, you got the 4 Hour Work Week, which is a book.
I would love to do it. I don't do it, though. I would love to.
You got to read the book. It's back here.
So I'm going to read the book and be able to do it right away.
Well, that's how it works. You read the book, 4 Hour Work Week, and you start implementing some of the action steps. So he might say, take off on Friday, do everything on Thursday. All right, now take over Thursday. Next thing you know, you're down to 4 hours.
I would love to, but yes, that was our thing because it was on Twitter. Anything on Twitter goes crazy like a fire. So we wanted to bring it here because we are millennials, the older side of it, the cap where it's about to cut off at. Yeah. We used to start at 1980 or 81? 80, yeah. So I'm 8 years in, actually. So not the older side of it, but yeah, that was our conversation that Whoopi had. What are your thoughts on it? Do you feel like millennials are lazy? Do you feel like it's just a different time? Do you feel like, what are your thoughts on it? Let us know in the comments. Comments being on YouTube. That's where we put our video on there. And once again, thank you for tapping in with us for another week of More Than a Side Hustle podcast.
Yes. You can check out
commercial break.
You can check out Cleaning Business University if you want to learn how to start and scale a remote cleaning business without having to clean houses. Check it out. Link will be in the show notes. And we might be doing a little Black Friday deal depending on when this episode drops. So you ready for that?
The lowest it will be.
If you've been sitting on the sidelines waiting to start that cleaning business, it will be linked in the show notes somewhere. Go check it out.
All right. See you next time.
Peace.